It depends on, well, of course it depends on how far along we're talking about here. You know, if they don't even know who they are, it's going to be hard to get them going in a direction. But so much of the time, people come in and they're hurt or they're injured or they have a problem. Here's an example. It doesn't exactly fit, but you'll get my meaning. A friend of mine had a hip replacement, and I said, well, how you doing? And he goes, I'm great. 5% of me is really sore right now, but I'm great. So much of, I think the answer to that question is, what can they do? Where can you begin? Can you begin sitting in a chair and learning a Tai Chi set in the chair? Almost everyone can do that. So you start where you're at, and you activate what you can activate. And by doing that, you stimulate the overall health of your mind and your brain and your well-being, and you'll be surprised at how much better you get, you know? It's like there was a study that Jack LaLanne was, you know, he was a chiropractor, did you know that? He wasn't a practicing one, but there's all these studies he kept quoting that people that were in their 90s that started weight training and how they would increase their strength and endurance twofold within the first 3 months. And he said, if people like that, they're 90 can do it, just think about the young people that are only 60, 70, or 80. What could they accomplish? And so a lot of it has to do with begin where you can begin, but do it.
It's funny, my husband is sitting right there and my mother in the front, and they always know I change everything. So I read in the book that it said for 20 seconds, but when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, that's so uncomfortable a lot. So my sense is that if you hug someone and you're really present when you're hugging, it gets released. So I don't think it has to be 20 seconds. It's the quality, right? Because you can feel it, right? It could be a second, but if you're really there and your heart is there, it's going to work.
Yes. Okay. So scrambling the eggs is probably... So there are lots of things that we can do and that we don't do, and we just have to choose our battles. So with the egg yolks, scrambling them, yes, can oxidize them. So if you fry the eggs in a little bit of butter, that would probably be better. Juicy.
Sounds good. Butter.
You know, how I like to think of it is, it's kind of like a hardware-software issue. So you have this hardware that's designed to do these discrete tasks. It's set up to function so that that finger does that and that finger does that, and your balance is intact and everything's working. And then you put a bunch of impulses into the brain that all of a sudden, you know, you're walking around with your arm in a sling and your back's out, so you're limping, and so all these weird other things are going back into the brain as feedback, and they're blurring the borders of the discrete channels that would be normally firing out into your body. So that's how I understand it.
Wow. Well, that's a hard one, really. And yes, if there are some sensitivities or allergies to those, then there would be different ways that we would do it. And that's where doing a plan for you would probably be appropriate. And there are a lot of supplements that we could use for that. But it's a hard one. It's tricky. But it's doable.
I think I'll poll the audience. Okay. Isn't that, you know, the millionaire thing, right? I'll poll the audience. So what do you think? I mean, I don't know the official answer, but I would think, I kind of like to say good sex is.
Yeah.
Right? What
Yeah,
would you say?
yeah. Well, some people say that any sex is better than no sex, but I would say good sex would be the best for the brain.
Okay.
So, you know, I was involved in this talk in the city too, and believe me, this is the best audience between San Francisco and here. You asked some great questions. Juicy questions, yes. So interestingly enough, all the studies are looking at lard being really being good for you. This is, you know, that page, that last study I gave you? Check it out. They're looking at all these kinds of fats being good for the body. Again, the saturated fat is in. Fat is back. It's out of jail. It's been released. Embrace it. It's juicy.
Wow.
I was thinking if 70% of the brain is fat, I was wondering what did the therapists work with?
The most dangerous fat we can eat is hydrogenated fat and trans fats, but we don't. We live in the Bay Area. You know, this is the area where we don't have a lot of those foods, unless, of course, you're eating a lot of the Oreos, cookies, and things like that. But they've actually been pretty good at replacing those fats too. That gets to be the dangerous fat.
Who would have thought a nutritionist would say, calamari fried in lard is good for you?
Well, I want to step back and I just want to say this, is that I'm also a cordon bleu chef. So when I hear calamari and lard, I don't normally put those two together. Calamari, I would probably put more olive oilish. You know, this is more Mediterranean. They don't do that much with the lard. So I'd probably go with the olive oil and the calamari.
It's like a species conflict.
What would you put in the lard? What are you going to buy?
Oh, Brussels sprouts. Vegetables, fat.
It always reminds me of that movie Sleeper from the 70s. He wakes up and he realizes all the foods that he thought were bad for him are now good for him.
Yes.
And that is
That's
the way
right.
of the research around nutrition. It's very true.
Love balance boards. I think that I like people to pick things that they like doing that happen to have a lot of balance as part of it. To me, that's the most fun. You're more likely to do it. So sports that require a lot of balance or activities that require a lot, I think, are great. And I think that's all I have to say about that. There's a whole topic we didn't go into tonight, but simple things. Sitting is a big problem for everything. 80% of Americans sit 85% of their waking hours. Just feel what that feels like. 85% of their waking hours, they're sitting. 80% of Americans. And so that creates a lot of problems. It creates belly fat. It creates, which is now considered the largest endocrine gland in the body, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so simple things like so much of us look at computers a lot or we read a lot and so forth, just putting something up on the counter so you have to stand up. And then when you're standing up looking at the computer, stand on one foot. Stand on your balance board. Put a squishy something under your feet so you're having to focus. You know, little things like that are amazingly useful.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but yeah, that's the great thing about the neuroplasticity, that we really can heal the brain, which, you know, really it's the brain, but it's our whole self. So the brain is in there, but yeah, it changes. Like the meditation can grow it, and you know the exercise can grow it, and those positive affirmations can grow it, and healing what the stressors are about. What, lard?
That lard.
I'm sure that'd be helpful too. But yeah, I mean, you know, people have had way more than 2 years of chronic stress and trauma and things like that are really, you know, are really severely painful. But people really do heal and recover, and it's all about really accessing the resilience. And when you think, I mean, there's a lot of wonderful teachers in the world of people who have suffered a lot, and how, you know, they've been able to overcome it and really accessing the resilience, which I think is really the mission of a lot of what we do, is to access that resilience, body, mind, and spirit.
And that's a great question. So, and it actually encompasses the whole lard thing too. The animals we eat need to be fed well, because this becomes part of who we are. So when we're eating animals or produce that hasn't been grown well, hasn't been fertilized well, hasn't been fed well, we incorporate that stuff into our bodies. So when you're eating food that has a very high omega-6s, like corn-based, that's going to promote the inflammation. So when we look at organic, there's a difference there because it's differently grown and it's differently fertilized. And that in itself will differently fertilize our bodies too.
Okay. Thank you, all three of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.